Okay, so I've made a discovery. Whilst I was trying to figure out how to do custom cameras, which I haven't got working yet, I found that I could use a bit of the programming I made to do the handbrake. So the program I was using for the cameras was on pressing left stick, it would toggle two different set state events. Okay, so set 0, set 1. And at the same time, the impulse would get sent to those events so that they would actually set that value. There was an impulse delayer just so that the impulse actually got to these two set state events before one of them was turned on or off. But essentially what it does is it toggles between cameras by changing this value between 1 and 0, and when this value equals 1 it changes to one camera, when it equals 0 it changes to another camera. That works for custom cameras, however for some reason this red camera here will not accept the change camera event. I don't know why. I don't want to use a custom camera because custom cameras do not deal with changes in velocity very well, whereas the game camera will sit nice and still whilst the truck is wobbling a little bit. Game cameras will actually just go all over the place and just will not sit still. So unless I simply make an event that actually changes the game camera its actual position by putting two sort of dummy objects in these two different positions, or whether I do manage to get to swap to this camera, it looks like alternative driving cameras aren't possible. Cameras that take you to specific points, such as like a map, a top-down view map or something, are very possible with this system, but at the moment changing to a different game camera doesn't seem to be possible. But this code here, as I was saying, because it just changes a value between 1 and 0, I can also use that to change the value of a parameter on the vehicle itself. So the way axles work is their upper value is set to 0 and the lower value is set to 1, which the game interprets as being 360 or infinite essentially. So that's what it's set to by default. So lower value 1, upper value 0. By simply changing the lower value back down to 0, that means that the rotational axles can't turn at all. So all this is doing is when you press the left stick, it does the same as before, it toggles the states of these two signs, but only after they've been activated. So whichever one is activated will set its value, in this case this one's activated, back to 0, meaning the wheels can no longer turn, and then when the player next presses the button, it toggles them again, and the wheels lower rotational value set back to 1, meaning they can turn an unlimited amount of times in full 360. What that effectively means is I have a handbrake implemented that the player doesn't have to hold in order to continue using it. So obviously if I use the system where it's simply on pressing the button it sets it to 0 and then sets it back to 1 upon releasing the button, it means you'd have to hold the handbrake for it to stay still. This system works quite well, so if I just put to games playtest here, you can see on the back as well I've implemented the point lights where the rear lights are. So truck's behaving as normally, wheels are rotating 360, it's got a nice soft suspension, and then if I want to stop, slow down, and then press the handbrake, I can still steer, I can still try to accelerate, I can still try to decelerate, but the truck will not rotate its wheels. The truck is still fully movable, it will move if physics determines it should. For example, me wiggling the wheels back and forth here will slightly change the truck's position, but the wheels will not rotate until I then release the stick. You see the truck's starting to slide backwards, and I can continue going again. What's good about this is that I can apply the handbrake at speed, and the truck will not spaz out or glitch. You can see when I stop, the wheels actually return to their original position as well. That, although that happens, it doesn't actually seem to affect the vehicle's behaviour. So again, I can stop at speed and then vehicle comes to a stop nice and smoothly. Obviously, due to the increased friction you saw there, because I was stopping at an angle, the wheel did visibly rubber band for a little bit there, but as I've determined in the past, that is just a quirk of the engine. That's not something you can really stop from happening. It doesn't really affect the way the truck behaves. Just looks a bit odd, but yeah, so that's the handbrake done. It's quite a simple system. Again, doesn't require a whole lot of programming to figure out. It's literally just a case of stopping the wheels from rotating, and it does just that. Again, I'm taking a break from working off camera because the red camera, for one reason or another, cannot be used. I don't know if it's maybe a replay only camera or spectator only camera, but until I figure out what the use of the red camera is, or whether or not I can swap to the red camera, it looks like this camera I'm using at the moment will be the only camera that the player will be able to use. If I've got to pick between a close-up camera and a far-out camera like this, I will pick the far-out camera. Reason being is that the player can see the entire vehicle. Makes sense for that to do that from multiple perspectives. Number one, mainly so that the player can see what the vehicle is doing. So obviously, if the vehicle gets stuck on something, you need to see what the vehicle is stuck on so you can do something about it. You can't do that if your camera is aimed in on the gun, on the machine gun. And also some players will want to see the vehicle working and see what suspension working as well. So there's not only functional but cosmetic reasons for only having this camera. But again, that is if that's a sort of a last resort. If I have to only use the one camera, then it will be this camera. The close-in camera would be get better in close quarters. I'm planning on having this truck actually go through an urban area, but I think that having the player camera clip through buildings every now and then is less of an issue than having the player get stuck on something and not be able to see what they're stuck on because they can't see the truck, essentially. I might change the camera interpolation so that when the traveler's playing at speed it doesn't zoom out quite so much. That would help. That's how far away the camera is when the player is still. But obviously when you travel at speed, the camera falls behind a little bit. Zoom out, so I may change its interpolation speed so that it doesn't do that so much. That would help in urban environments if the player is travelling at speed. Fingers crossed I can get the camera system working, but it looks like it's going to require quite a bit of experimenting because custom cameras do not work very well by comparison to the game camera. Even if you choose for it to inherit the game camera settings, they just do not work very well. So I probably am going to have two objects that are simply tied to the vehicle's position, two invisible objects, and the camera simply teleports to either one when the player presses the change camera button. So at the moment I'm pressing change camera and it does nothing. Yeah, progress has been made. The coding that I meant to be using for the camera is instead being used to toggle the handbrake. As I've said before, that is actually a working handbrake because the vehicle's physics still work whilst the handbrake is on. It doesn't just freeze the vehicle in its place. Another system I was thinking about using would have ended up resulting in that. Obviously I didn't go for that one, because I didn't want the player to be able to press a handbrake and then just freeze mid-air. But yeah, this is working quite nicely. I'm just going to experiment now actually whether it will help me stay on top of this car. There, handbrake is on. Wheels will no longer rotate. Before the truck would roll off a surface like this, it does still appear like it is about to roll off, but not due to the wheels turning, it's just due to the quirky physics. Get the wheel planted on there nicely. see the wheels are not rotating, but yeah, due to the quirky physics, unfortunately the truck isn't quite happy with staying on there. When I get rotational suspension implemented, that shouldn't be a problem. So at the moment suspension goes up and down, but it doesn't bank. Once I get banking in there, the suspension should behave a little better on odd surfaces like that. Obviously it's not very normal to drive a truck over someone's car, but that may happen in the mission, what with it going, the mission being an urban area. But yeah, that is it for now.